Okay, so we are going to get started officially. Sharifa, welcome to this Facebook Live. So
Thank
everyone, I'm
you.
being joined today. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. I've been joined today with our guest, Sharifa Crawford, and together we're going to be talking about creating wealth using the power of your story. So earlier this year, we all made intentions for 2019, and my own intention had to do with this interesting topic of wealth. And what I decided to do was take this intention to my community. So in my coaching community, we started to have conversation every week about wealth, and it made the topic of wealth to dominate our conversation in everyday life. One of the things that I realized, and we all realize, is that oftentimes we all profess and affirm wealth personally, but when it comes to having a public conversation around the concept of wealth, the dynamic changes. So over time, we see people adjust their mindset. We see language become elevated. We see narratives and paradigms around wealth begin to change. And one of the people in my community that had exemplified this transition into wealth building is Sharifa. And I thought I'd invite Sharifa to come and tell us about our story related to wealth building. Why Sharifa? Because I realized that in a short time that she became a part of our community and we became a part of our community, that we see this idea of wealth elevated beyond what she does in a 9 to 5 into her business, into the impact she's having in the community, to going overseas, into relationship, into spirituality. So we saw this overflow of the concept of wealth around storytelling. And I see someone exemplify and personify that particular identity. And it was my very great excitement to bring her on to come tell us about ourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit of a bio about Sharifa, and then I'm going to have her go ahead and introduce herself and go ahead and tell us our story. If you are joining us, thank you so much for joining. I need you all to share this post, to like this post, to make a comment. If you have specific questions for myself or Sharifa, go ahead and put in the questions. I'm going to read it out. As much as I can as you join, I'm going to try to give a shout out as well. So, excuse me, without further ado, Sharifa Crawford, she's an investor, an international nonprofit leader, and a founder of a nonprofit called The Journey to Africa, based in Washington, D.C., which is going to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. In addition to that, Sharifa also worked as a trade policy advisor to the British government. Sharifa is a coaching client of mine, and we've had the ability or opportunity to work together around our story, around our wealth building, and it gives me great joy and excitement to introduce Sharifa Crawford. Hi,
Thank
Sharifa.
you. Hi, Vega. Thank you
Great.
so much for that gracious introduction. I'm so excited to join you tonight. I'm so grateful that you are, allowing me this platform to share my story and experience, and of course, the journey to Africa. So, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure. So now giving this particular topic, this particular show, it's called Tell Your Story Facebook Live. And I think it's
Mhm.
only appropriate that we start with your story. So why don't you tell us your story? I happen to know that you come from an ancestry or lineage of wealth builders and entrepreneurs. So why don't you tell us your entrepreneur or wealth story?
Sure, sure. So I'm from the Detroit metro area originally, and I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So, for example, my mom has owned her own financial planning business for the last 35 years, and she's also managed a single family property during that time. So, some of my earliest memories are me helping out at the office after class, after school. So helping her with filing, answering the phones, transferring to her line. So stuffing marketing flyers for, you know, her upcoming seminars that she'd be hosting on financial planning. So those are some of my earliest memories growing up. And on my dad's side, my dad has been a computer consultant, traveling all over the country on short-term assignments from 6 to 12 months. And so he, you know, sets his own schedule. He also manages 2 single-family properties. And so I grew up watching my parents set their own schedules, you know, create the life that they wanted based on, you know, what they do. And so little did I know that that would spark my, you know, entrepreneurial mindset. And growing up, I, you know, founded the Explorers Club at age 7. So it was like a group of kids from the neighborhood, and we all put in our allowance, our weekly allowances, dues, and you know, it was like basically a whole bunch of adventure activities we do with that money that we pulled together. I also had a very lucrative lemonade stand growing up, and I actually started a promotional marketing company in college. So this has just been something that I've always has been a part of me, which is the entrepreneurial mindset. And so that just kind of led me to, you know, after college, I'm, you know, seeing that I'm working 9 to 5 and realizing that, you know, working a 9 to 5 will not bring you financial freedom. And in fact, you don't even have job security. And so I said, let me look into maybe, you know, investing in the stock market to see if I can supplement my income that way and create wealth in that way. And of course, it takes a huge, like, initial capital investment, really long, you know, horizon to get to those numbers that you're really looking for. And so I looked back and I said, what is the thing that has really brought this steady supplemental income to my parents all these years? It's real estate. So I looked at the different real estate investing strategies. There's wholesaling, there's flipping, there's buy and hold, there's syndicating. And for me, wholesaling looked like the best way to break into real estate investing. And that is what I've been doing. I'm a real estate investor as well as working full time until I leave my job behind.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we met at a financial institution called Life Asset. And at that event, I was speaking about using your story to reach investors and clients. And for a lot of people in the room, it was the very first time they heard about storytelling in that particular context of business and monetization. So I wanted to know is that what was your own experience or aha moment with storytelling before that event and after that event? And at that event, what was it for you that really ignited your perspective to see, oh, the possibility of actually manifesting or creating wealth using your own story?
Right. For me, it was just realizing that I have a story, but it's all in the art of crafting it and you know, making sure it has the most impact. So before I said, I'm not really sure what this is going to be about, but as an entrepreneur, when you're starting your own business, you're wearing 7 different hats. And so I said, I don't know what this is going to be about, but I probably need to know about it. So that was my initial reaction and instinct to actually attending the workshop. And then afterwards, I said, I need to know what Benga knows. I need to be able to share my story powerfully the way that he does. I need to know how to start this nonprofit, and you have experience with nonprofit programming. You know, you've worked at the UN. You've had all these experiences that will be helpful to me while I'm also crafting my story. So it was just a, you know, easy decision for me.
And when you finally made that decision, and over the time that we started working together in the capacity of a life coach to a client, um, did you come to a shift in your perception that, you know what, whatever it is that Benga does, I actually have mine. I think my story is as equally as powerful as his story when he's doing something that is about him, and when I'm doing something that is about myself, my story is equally powerful. Did you reach that point, or is still a transition for you?
I reached that point because I actually volunteered to share my story at the workshop. And you know, at one point, you know, there were tears in my eyes, and then, you know, I was moved, and people in the room, I looked around, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And so that was kind of when I said, "Wow, like if I can stop crying and share my story, you know, and just, you know, figure out how I can make it, you know, as powerful and impactful as possible, then, you know, that will, the sky's the limit."
And I like that because I think there's something I said in my book that when telling your story, come from the spirit. And come from the spirit, what I mean is there has to be a great deal of vulnerability and authenticity in sharing our story. It's not something that is scripted. It's not something to try to appease or communicate to a demographic. It's something you're just coming from your core and sharing your heart and sharing your truth of who you are. I think when we do that, it becomes borderless. And borderless, what I mean by that is collapses every cultural, financial, demographical barriers that we may have. And people connect to us as humans because while we may have individual stories, at the end of the day, the themes in our stories are universal. Whether it's a theme of love, whether it's a theme of overcoming, of succeeding,
Mm-hmm.
of triumph, or trial, or tragedy, whatever it is, people can relate with that. And a lot of people spend so much time, and you know, I want my story to be compelling. I want it to sound nice. I want to dominate the room. I want to create presence on the stage. People see all of that and don't even want to be vulnerable and just like sharing their own truth. So I just
Wow.
say that, and I like the way you mentioned that, that at the workshop that you just volunteered and you shared the story and everything was silent and everyone was like, whoa. Everyone was like, at that point, I couldn't even say anything else because you just electrified the room. You came from
Thank
the
you.
spirit, you were powerful. And that for me was that aha moment. If I were to say at the workshop for you, was that particular moment of coming
Mm,
into your true voice and your power. And look at where we are now on
I
Facebook,
know.
you know, and even going more and further than that. Okay, so let's stay on this idea of wealth. So in the community, in the program that we just had, we started to talk about wealth. And one of the things that I noticed, not just in the community, but everyday life, is the subject of wealth is not as comfortable, particularly for our culture in this part of the world. It's kind of considered intrusive. We used to start having money conversation, you know, with people. So it's kind of the off the table type of conversation. However, privately, we visualize wealth, we profess wealth, we affirm wealth.
Mhm.
Then when it comes to like public conversation and manifesting and embodying that as part of our truth, the dynamic is often different. What are the things that have helped you to adjust your mindset and your paradigm and to just be comfortable about talking about wealth?
Sure. For me, it's something that I'm passionate about because I'm passionate about not working a 9 to 5 the rest of my life. I'm passionate about not being in the rat race for the rest of my life. So that's what we talk about all the time. Why aren't we talking about how we can get out of that and really start making an impact in, you know, in our lives and all the lives of the people that, you know, watch us and in our communities by creating wealth and creating generational wealth and then using that to change other people's lives. And that's what I'm hoping to do with the Journey to Africa.
So let's talk about Journey to Africa is Black History Month. And this is a great time where there's a lot of conversation about Black identity and cultural identity in the United States. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand that you started this nonprofit called Journey to Africa. So if you can tell us about how that even started, what is the story behind that nonprofit, and what does the
Sure.
nonprofit hope to accomplish?
Sure. So the Journey to Africa is a nonprofit that I started, and basically we send children ages 13 to 17 to various African countries so that they can connect to their historical and cultural roots in Africa, and also to prepare the next generation for global citizenship. And what made me long before I started this I had a powerful experience on study abroad in South Africa in 2007. And I was a girl, from Detroit, and I was at Michigan State at the time, where you had to drive an hour outside of Detroit past like cornfields and farms, and then you get to Michigan State. And then when I went on study abroad, I was plopped into this world where all Black people are running government and owning businesses. And in South Africa, there are no financial aid. There is no such thing as financial aid. So all the kids I was going to school with, either they were being sponsored by a company or their parents were paying for their education. And they came from all over the continent: Cameroon, Egypt, Uganda. And they were the sons and daughters of ambassadors. And they spoke 5 and 6 languages. And on top of that, they knew more about American foreign policy currently and historically than I did. So I was like, this is something. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so it's really interesting. I don't think that it's a coincidence that a lot of my American classmates that came with me on that study abroad, we all went on to careers in international affairs, public service, social impact, human rights. And so I feel like if our young African American kids had a powerful experience like that in their formative years, that would change the course of their lives personally and professionally forever. It would change the course of the African American community, and it would just make this huge ripple effect globally, and maybe even encourage them to study African studies or international affairs in college, and maybe do some great work on the continent after college if they so see fit. So that was really what sparked it. And also looking to our brothers and sisters who are of Jewish descent, they have immersion programs, cultural immersion programs. Middle East, they send their kids to Mecca. And so this is something that is not just an idea that is, a pipe dream. This is something that is being executed now, and it's been successful. And so I don't find many programs like that for African American kids. And so that's why I wanted to start it.
Oh, great. And I understand that you have a GoFundMe going on right now. How can people be a part of that?
Absolutely. So please go to gofundme.com/the journey to Africa. And we've already received close to 400 donations so far. And the goal for February is $400. And of course, we want to raise more. The goal is $5,000 to take our first trip. But the reason why the goal is $400 for the month of February is because this is the 400th anniversary of the first slaves to arrive in the U.S. from Ghana. And so the Ghanaian government is actually doing a year-long campaign called the Year of Return, where they're encouraging African Americans to come back to Ghana in this Year of Return in 2019. And so that is why I launched in 2019, because I want to bring the first group of our kids in December to Ghana so that they can be a part of this huge celebration organized by the Ghanaian government and, kick off the first Journey to Africa trip.
Oh, that's amazing. One of the things that I can relate to that, not just because I'm African, but the work that I do in coaching and storytelling is in my book. I spoke about this idea of family identity and the idea that whatever we're doing with our purpose, with identity now, is a continuum from our ancestors. And I have you all take do like this memory lane trip and do this evaluation and tracking the commonalities of your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, as far as you can go. And you start to see everything started coming to perspective, and you realize my journey doesn't start with me, it's not going to end with me. I am part of this continuum for something way bigger than myself. And I cannot imagine for people from the communities here having that opportunity to go to the continent, to go on the ground. You guys might even consider doing an ancestry DNA review party while on the continent.
Great idea. Yes.
Imagine having that revelation on the ground. So I definitely think it's a wonderful initiative, and I'll be happy to be a part of it in any way that I can.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. So still talking about stories, one of the typical reaction I get from people when we talk about everyone has a story to tell. The first
Mhm.
reaction is, that is true, but my story is not what anyone want to listen to. There's nothing exciting about my life that anyone should be thinking about listening to my story. Yes, people like Oprah and Obama and all of the great leaders have great stories to tell. I'm just a regular person. I don't think I have that much story that is audience worthy. So what would you say to such people, given that you were recently a part of a storytelling program that we did? How has your appreciation to storytelling became elevated? And also, given that on Sunday, February 10th, for those in the DMV area, we are hosting the Tell Your Story DMV at Capitol Heights. For those who want to be a part of that, but is saying, I understand this whole idea of storytelling, but my story is not that exciting. What are you going to say to them?
I would say to them that everyone has a story that is exciting, if not some sort of element in their story that's exciting, because we were all put on this earth because there was something that had to be done that only you could execute. Just you. There's no one like you in the entire world. So, for that very fact, there is something unique and special about your story. And so, why sell yourself short by not trying to find out what that is? Because you're then the world can't be benefited as a result of it. So, we all have a story, even if you don't think you do.
And what was your own experience really going through an intensive specifically on your story? What
Hmm.
what new insight or what new appreciation did you have for your story now that you didn't have before? You had a little bit before and now it's been elevated.
Right. So I think for me, just understanding that for the journey to Africa, for example, those experiences in South Africa and all of my experiences leading to my career in international trade and now launching the nonprofit, that those were special moments. And I didn't know at the time how they were going to come together. But through the program, I was able to identify those pivot moments and be able to create a story for myself that wasn't, long-winded, wasn't a 5-pager, that I can literally go somewhere and speak to a group of high school students or college students, and I can go to a corporate organization and share my story there. So just, I think the powerful moment for me was just being able to walk away with something that I can, now go execute.
And what would you say to someone who is considering to say hire a life coach, hire a story coach, be a part of a story intensive, a story workshop, or even considering coming to tell your story DMV on Sunday? What would you say to such a person? But they're still undecided yet. You're kind of on the fence.
Right. Right. I would say that you owe it to yourself to go. Because as I said before, if you're an entrepreneur, especially someone running their own business, you are wearing 7 different hats and you need to know about everything in the beginning at least. And so why not go to your workshop on Sunday and hear about how you can amplify your messaging when you get to that place? Or not even if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a professional, because it's the same thing. When you're approaching a 6-figure job, there's a different set of skills that's required. And when you go into an interview, they want to know what values are, what your mission is, and you're going to have to be able to articulate those things. So I would tell them that they should absolutely go. Their time will not be wasted joining your workshop on Sunday or joining your coaching program. I thought it was phenomenal. And it was just great also because we had an accountability partner. So it's not just our one-on-one calls and sessions with Banga, but we had someone from the group who was our accountability partner. And to both Banga and the partner, you have to have something done when we have those calls. You are, expected to have this homework done. And one of my homework assignments was this Facebook Live. So, I mean, it really pushes you into your greatness. It pushes you into your next step, whatever that may be. Because, of course, I feel like I could have launched this on my own, but it would have taken me, I would have been kicking the bucket, and it would have happened 3 years from now, because I would have been second guessing myself. I would have been trying to talk myself out of things. And a coaching program, a life coaching program by Banga, it really forced me to just go, literally, to just get it done. And now I'm so happy that I've been a part of it. And yeah, I can't wait to see what's next.
Amazing. So let's talk a little bit as we try to bring this to an end. Let's sit a little bit on the monetization component of things. One of the things that I have you all do was to have a very face-to-face conversation with money, right? And with wealth building. And a lot of you said it was nerve-wracking, and it was like, this is out of my comfort zone. And what is interesting is that almost everyone came back and said there was the perception and there was the reality. So what would you say to someone who is still going through that process of giving themselves permission to be an entrepreneur, to create wealth, to be an author, to be an investor, or a policy advisor like yourself, with wrestling between the perception and the reality? Can you tell them your own experience having to face both of them and what you saw on the other side of perception?
Right. I think that what I realized was that, well, and it's exactly what you said, that you have to get out of your own way. And for me, the aha moment was when you said, when we were going over my resume, and you're like, okay, what is your next step in international trade? And I couldn't even articulate it. And then you said, at some point, you have to decide whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or if you're going to be a professional. And that was huge for me, because that gave me the permission to really dream and say, what does my life look like working for myself full time? And how can I piece things together so that this can happen for me in the near future? And so we explored my real estate investing. And one of the goals that you gave us towards the end of the program was set a monetary goal of what you want to hit for after 90 days. I said $90,000, and you times that by 3. And so it was basically forcing us to figure out a plan for how we were going to execute that and make it happen. And I think for me, it was just getting out of my own way and just focusing on the task at hand and just making it happen.
Wow. And what was the reality when you eventually go to make it happen? What you thought you were going to see, then what you saw? Was it the same? Was it different? Was it confirming? Was it contradictory to what you imagined? And you having those conversations?
I think it was more than I expected, because I thought that I would be working full time for at least another 5 years, and I have to do all these steps in between to get there. But I realized that if I take the right actions now, that I can make that come to pass in a shorter time span than I really realized.
Oh, that's great. That's great. One of my coaches also told me that your decision has a correlation to your wealth, that you can't stay in a place of ambiguity. You can't stay in the position of sitting on the fence and not really deciding if you want to move in the direction of your dreams, of your aspiration, or if you want to keep making it aspirational and say one day it's going to happen. The manifestation actually starts when you say, you know what, I'm going to take that which is aspirational and I'm going to bring it to the now and manifest it. One of the things we looked at was this idea that we always have what I call a deja vu goal. A deja vu goal was the goal you set for yourself in 2015, and you roll it over to 2016, and you roll it over to 2018, and now 2019, and it's always this elusive continuum that's never going to happen. But once you decide, and I like the way you make that decision, am I going to be an entrepreneur? Am I going to be a professional? And what you thought would take 5 years happened in a couple of weeks, and it's still there seeing that manifestation happen quite instantaneously. And that is really what I call storytelling. And my definition of storytelling is not just your past till date, it is your proximity to your dreams, to your aspirations. And what happens when you tell your story is this: you activate a community, you activate a tribe. And it's in that tribe, using conversation, that is where all the miracle happens. So you went ahead to get your nonprofit off the ground. You didn't know you had a very skilled digital branding expert. You have a marketing person. You had a coach. You have all these resources. You have accountability partners. You have investors. You have people writing you checks, just because you decided to tell your story. And those checks keep coming in because of that. And I think my message to those who are listening to it, to us now, is you have this dream. It's a deja vu goal. You keep rolling it over. If you can take a very baby tiny steps in that direction, you might just see that perception sometimes is not reality. And reality sometimes is a lot easier than perception. And sometimes it's even grander than perception. So you just got to go in the direction of your dreams. So as we close, Sharifa, what do you want to leave the audience with regarding however direction you want to take it? Journey to Africa, real estate, story, wealth, DC, Black History Month, Wakanda, whatever direction you want to take it. What do you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, so I would like to leave the audience with the Journey to Africa. Please go follow us on our Instagram at the Journey to Africa. And you can also email us at info@thejourneytoafrica.com. We would love to hear your thoughts and ideas on programming, on any ideas that you may have at all in terms of shaping this into a dynamic programming opportunity for the kids. And of course, please donate on GoFundMe.com/The Journey to Africa so that we can send our first group of kids to Ghana in December of 2019.
Excellent. And a few follow-up announcement I want to leave you all with is, if you have not gotten my book yet, Borderless Voice, The Power of Telling Your Story and Defining Your Identity, you can do so on my website, which is benga.org, or you can go to amazon.com and search for the book, Borderless Voice, The Power of Telling Your Story and Defining Your Identity. If you are in the DMV area, come this Sunday, February the 10th. We are hosting Tell Your Story DMV at eLife Restaurant in Capitol Heights. We look forward to seeing you there. If you happen to be overseas or outside of the DMV area, we also have an online coaching intensive program that starts March 1. We'd love you all to be a part of that. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, and have a fabulous rest of the week. Thank you, Sharifa, for being my guest on today's conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. My pleasure.